Mr. Quick's class.
Oh, yeah. All right.
I tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an
They
idiot.
expected it to last and survive. Okay, let's go over these words, definitely words that we need to know in the first part of our reading here. But I would say throughout the entire essay, because some of these words are really key to understanding his position. Now remember everything that we're doing this quarter is umbrellaed by this analyzing author's argument. And of course, the only way we can properly analyze an author's argument or determine whether the argument is good is that we must know what the issue is, and we must know what the position on the issue is. Well, these words help us to understand that. The first word, of course, is expedient. That is a word that is mentioned quite a few times. And it means obtaining an end, especially one that is possibly, I mean, it's convenient, but it's also possibly improper or immoral. It's like taking the easy way out, but the easy way out may not always be the proper or moral way. A person is impoverished, meaning they're poor. They don't have a lot of money. Now, you can rob a bank to get some money. I mean, that would be convenient, but of course, that would not be proper, and definitely wouldn't be moral to rob a bank just to get some money that you don't have. So, I mean, that's a really rough layman explanation of that word, but that's basically what it means. He uses that as a noun. He uses it as a noun. He uses it as an adjective. So when we're reading this and we see this word, we definitely have to understand, which way he's using it. But the adjective is much the same. And then he uses a different variation of this word, inexpedient, which is the opposite of convenient, meaning not practical, not suitable, and not advisable to even, entertain that way or that way to achieving a means, ends to a means. Okay, the next word, alacrity, just basically means cheerful readiness, brisk, cheerful readiness, meaning you're excited about doing something or you're ready to do it at a moment's notice. And another word he uses quite a bit, conscience. Now, I know okay, we already knew what that word means, but let's really look at that word and make the connection to expedient with the definition of conscience. A person's moral sense of right and wrong. Here we're seeing that word moral there. Moral sense of right and wrong. And that guide, it acts as a guide to one's behavior. And some even refer to the conscience as the voice that we hear in our head, but we know that's not always the voice of conscience that we know. So, but some, associate that. It's that moral guide. The moral compass is another term that is used to describe conscience. And when we feel that someone does not have a conscience, that's someone who just does anything. It doesn't matter, right or wrong. They just do it, and they don't care about the consequences or how it's going to affect people. We call that person, he doesn't have a conscience. He uses also the word conscientious, which is somewhat related to conscience, wishing to do one's work or duty well and thoroughly to the best of one's ability, of course, coming from conscience. Because if you have a conscience, then you care about your work being done properly. So, if you're a conscientious person, then you always making sure all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, full stops. You double check it, you check it again. That's a conscientious type of person. Okay, so with that said, why don't we read it again? I think that would be beneficial, since we have a basic idea of some of the words here. Okay. All right, so we're going to read it again. All right, so I don't have to stop, because I want to read day one reading all the way through. So I don't want to have to stop. So when I pass this point, don't say, Mr. Quick, what happened? Because I don't have a connection here with the board here with what I'm reading. Okay, blame it on technology. Don't blame it on me. Okay, I heartily accept the motto. Now let's keep the words that we just learned in mind. I'm going to go over it again, so you have to stop. I'm going to go over it again. I heartily accept the motto that government is best which governs least. And I should like to see it acted up to more rapidly and systematically carried out. It finally amounts to this, which also I believe, that government is best which governs not at all. And when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government which they will have. Government is best, but inexpedient. But most governments are usually, and all governments are sometimes, inexpedient. The objections which have been brought against a standing army, and they are many and weighty, and deserve to prevail, may also be brought against a standing government. The standing army is only an arm of the standing government. The government itself, which is only the mode which the people have chosen to execute their will, is equally liable to be abused and perverted before the people can act through it. Witness the present Mexican War, the work of comparatively a few individuals using the standing government as their tool, for in the outset the people would not have considered to this measure the American government. What is it but a tradition, though a recent one, endeavoring to transmit itself unimpaired to posterity, but each instant losing some of its integrity? It has not the vitality and force of a single living man, for a single man can bend it to his will. It is a sort of wooden gun to the people themselves, but it is not less it is not the less necessary for this, for the people must have some complicated machinery or other, and here it's deemed to satisfy the idea of government which they have. Governments show us how successfully men can be opposed upon, even imposed on themselves for their own advantage. It is excellent, we must all allow, yet this government never of itself furthered any enterprise, but by the alacrity with which it got out of its way. It does not keep the country free. It does not settle the West. It does not educate. The character inherent in the American people has done all that has been accomplished. And it would have done somewhat more if the government had not sometimes got it in its way. For government is an expedient by which men would fain succeed in letting one another alone, and has been said, when it is most expedient, the governed are most let alone by it. Trade and commerce, if they were not made of Indian rubber, would never manage to bounce over obstacles which legislators are continually putting in their way. And if one were to judge these men wholly by the effects of their actions and not partly by the intentions, they would deserve to be classed and punished with those mischievous persons who put obstructions on the railroad. But to speak practically and as a citizen, unlike those who call themselves no government men, I ask for not at once no government, but at once a better government. Let every man make known what kind of government would command his respect, and that will be one step toward obtaining it. After all, The practical reason why, when the power is once in the hands of the people, a majority are permitted and for a long period continue to rule is not because they are most likely to be in the right, nor because this seems... We read the inspiration for this essay. It is an essay. We read the inspiration for it in Walden. If you were reading Walden and you were, conscious while you were reading it, now you remember when he was put in jail. And I specifically said that we would discuss that later. Well, this is the later, because the details of why he went to jail is in this essay. He wrote this essay because of that experience. Now, this, in my opinion, and maybe some others, is his most famous work. This is it. This is Henry David Thoreau, the one we know and love, those of us who know him or knew him. It is Civil Disobedience. That wasn't the original name of this essay when it was first published in 1849. The original name was Resistance to Civil Government. And as provocative as that title was, obviously you understand why they changed it to Civil Disobedience, which is a little less threatening. Now, many people who have read this essay were inspired by its ideas and became themselves politically active. Now, this is the side of Henry David Thoreau we have yet to experience. His political activist side. We got to know his environmentalist side, but not his political activist side. And this essay is it. Famous people like Dr. Martin Luther King read this and were inspired, and many others, to become politically active in America to bring about change, needed change. His whole purpose for writing this essay was the exact same reason. So I guess that makes him a dissident. And a dissident is someone who opposes or goes against the official policy of an authoritarian state, which he viewed the American government as. Running an authoritarian state, or the beginnings of such. So that made him a dissident. He was against a lot of many of its policies, some of which he mentions in this essay. The interesting thing about this essay is that every point he makes in this essay has come to pass about American government. Every point. It's like as his forethought would almost give you the feeling as he's seen the future. But of course he hasn't. But he has such forethought that he knew the road that was being traveled and where it may lead. And he was pretty much right on the money with most, if not all, of the points made in his essay. Now, you have to understand. Let's understand his point of view, okay? Let's understand his point of view. His point of view is not from ours. His point of view is from someone who sees the American government as new. And it was. Not even a good 60 years old. There were still people alive who could tell you a time when there wasn't an America. So that makes him and others very skeptical. They were a bunch of skeptics. They were looking at this like, what are they doing? They were looking at it as like an experiment. They trying something that ain't going to work. This ain't going to work, So it was very new. Fresh in the minds of the people were revolution. When they rose up against Britain successfully. That was fresh in their mind. And many of them saying, hey, y'all keep acting like this, we're going to do it again. I mean, this was in the minds of the people during this time. You have to understand. Must a citizen ever for a moment or in the least degree resign his conscience to the legislator? Why is every man a conscience then? I think that we should be men first and subjects afterwards. It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right. It is truly enough said that a corporation has no conscience, but a corporation of conscientious men. Okay, so he's saying that the issue is that there's no problem with the government. That's the issue? Okay, so that's the issue he's arguing. You don't agree. Go ahead, yes. Okay, so you say the issue is the government, the problem with the government. The government is a problem, or the government. Yes? Okay, so I guess we can all agree that the issue involves the government. Okay, so I have to agree with that because obviously if we're talking about controversial issue, I don't care what country you're from, that's probably going to be one of the most controversial issues. Everybody got an opinion on the government, and often they aren't the same. So, issue fixed. Government. What's his position now? I think we can maybe get to that from here too. What's his position on this issue? Do you want his position is that they should do more? Okay. And you're saying that, essentially you're saying the opposite of what she's saying. That it should do less. Be better. Okay. Is that what you're saying? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that what you're saying? It should be better. Yes? Anyone else? Yes?
I think what he's trying to say is like, the government isn't really, what we can understand from here is he's saying that the government really isn't doing much other than finding a temporary solution for a temporary solution for a bigger problem.
Okay. All right. So you're saying they're not doing enough? Are they doing, okay, what they're doing is not good. Okay, so actually all three saying something different. Okay, so let's establish this, the issue, and we can all write this down, is the governance of the government. How the government is governing, basically, is the issue. How the government is governing. How it's doing it. How it's doing it. Now, when he mentions what it's doing, that's going to be, obviously, that's going to be some evidence supporting his whatever his position is. But what is his position?
That he thinks that the government isn't, like, it's best when it doesn't do it.
It's best, okay, so, it's doing too much? It's doing not enough. That's what.
No.
What it's doing is not good?
He said that it's best if it doesn't govern at all.
Okay, so I take.
There's no point in the government because it doesn't do the work.
Okay, so I don't think we have his full position yet. So I think we got to read a little bit more. Yes.
Not at all.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's continue reading. In other words, we don't have we don't feel like we have his position in full yet. So let's continue reading here. For government is an expedient by which men would fain succeed in letting one another alone. And as has been said, when it is most expedient, the governed are most let alone by it. Trade and commerce. The governed are most let alone, if they were not made of Indian rubber, would never manage to bounce over obstacles which legislators are continually putting in their way. And if one were to judge these men wholly by the effects of their actions and not partly by their intentions, they would deserve to be classed and punished with those mischievous persons who put obstacles on the railroads. But to speak practically and as a citizen, unlike those who call themselves no government men, I ask for not at once no government, but at once a better government. Let every man make known what kind of government would command his respect, and that will be one step toward obtaining it. Okay, before I can even say something, go ahead.
I think he not things that actually from the government.
Yeah.
He wants it from it more than more. And
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you getting it on the button.
he thinks that
Listen, he's answering the question. Go ahead.
he thinks that the government didn't use that things that people need in a moral way. He made immoral things that to bad.
Right. Yes. Okay, so he kind of hit it on the button. I don't know if you were listening, but his position is not for no government, but for better government. So his position that there should be better governance. Better governance. Okay, so he doesn't have a problem with government. Now, this is, to me, I think this is classic Thoreau. Because if you remember some of the issues where we thought he was one-sided on, and then we discovered he's not. For instance, solitude. And we were just convinced that he loves being alone, he hates people, he's antisocial. And then we read Visitors, and he killed it. He said, no, actually, I do like being around people. I do like being social. So he likes the idea of government. But his thing is government should govern good. Yes? Yes. And he's not in agreement to the way things were going at that particular time. Let's go back up to the top, because I want to bring our attention to this line here, if we can look. Government is at best but an expedient. What does that mean? I gave you the definition of expedient, so you should be able to tell me easy what that is. Go ahead and break it down. Just explain it to me real quick. What does it mean? Government is at best an expedient. Somebody in the back. You can answer the question yet. No. I'm asking the questions right now because I'm trying to make some determinations. But okay, you can ask the question. Go ahead. Maybe that's answer my question. Go ahead.
The rule of expediency is applicable.
Must the citizen ever for a moment or in the least degree resign his conscience to the legislator? Why has every man a conscience then? I think that we should be men first and subjects afterwards. It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right. It is truly enough said that a corporation has no conscience, but a corporation of conscientious men is a corporation with a conscience. Law never made men a whit more just, and by means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made the agents of injustice. A common and natural result of undue respect for the law is that you may see a file of soldiers, colonial, captain, corporals, privates, powder monkeys, all marching in admirable order over hill and dale to the wars against their wills, against their common sense and consciences, which makes it very steep marching indeed, and produces a palpitation of the heart. They have no doubt that it is a damnable business in which they are concerned. They are all peaceably inclined. Now, what are they? Men at all? Or small movable forts and magazines at the service of some unscrupulous man in power? Visit the Navy Yard, and behold, a Marine, such as a man as an American government can make, or such as it can make a man with his black arts, a mere shadow and reminiscence of humanity. A man laid out alive and standing, and already, as one may say, buried under arms with funeral accompaniments. Though it may be, not a drum was heard, not a funeral note. As his course to the rampart we hurried. Not a soldier discharged his farewell shot, or the graves our hero was buried. Okay, so let's go back to the top. Let's go back to the top, and I guess I'll government is at best but an expedient. Now, if you didn't get that line, that part of that sentence, everything that came after it is pretty, then you're lost. That's why when you're reading, you come to a word that you don't understand, you got to stop and look it up. Because after that word, if you didn't bother looking it up, you were lost pretty much for the rest of how much ever you read. But now that we know what the word means, can we kind of put in layman terms? Can you explain to me what that means, Mr. Kareem? Government is at best but an expedient. Oh, yeah, that's what I want you to do. I want you to take that, because I gave you the definition, so I know you got it. I want you to take that definition and apply it here and tell me, what does he mean? What is he saying here? Government is at best but an expedient.
Okay, so basically the government just takes the easiest route or the shortest route, and doesn't matter if it's longer or moral, it just has to be convenient.
Okay, all right, anyone else? Yes.
Maybe that functions in a good way, but it's an improper use.
Okay, yes.
Because it kind of likes the government, but he just expects that it's going to end.
Say that again.
He expected the government's going to end today, but he likes it. So
Sorry, I keep forgetting to do that.
he expects that this government is going to end, but he already makes it. He says that it's a first.
Okay, he expects the government is going to end, but okay, Ms. Hebo? Okay, government is at best but an expedient. In other words, okay, we know the word expedient means convenient. Convenient. So at best, government is convenient. Now you have to assume that he's talking about convenient for whom? The people. The people is, I think, who he's talking about here. So government is best in expedient. So it's a convenient way for us to keep society organized, I guess would be a good way to put it. But most governments are usually, let's look at the rest of that, and then you understand why I say that. But most governments are usually, and all governments are sometimes, inexpedient. And then that helps us to fully understand. Inexpedient means what?
Not practical.
Not practical. Not convenient. So it's supposed to be convenient, but it's not convenient. Most of the time. In other words, it's a hindrance. It's just like something that makes things harder than make things easier. And this is what he's trying to say. So, but I need for you to remember the other part of the definition that Kareem mentioned. Because he's using both of the meanings here. And the other part of the definition is that convenient, but possibly what? In other words? Right. Convenient, possibly improper or immoral. In other words, for the price you pay for the convenience may be doing something that is not correct or doing something in a way that may harm or may go against your belief. So, but, don't take my word for it. Let's see if he's applying the other part of that definition as we continue to read. The objections which have been brought against a standing army, and they are many and weighty. Now we're being an explanation of his reasoning for the second part of that definition. You would have many people who would argue that in many ways an army is immoral. But let's see if that's what he's trying to, what he's hinting at as we continue here. And deserve to prevail, may also at last be brought against the standing government. So these same reservations can also be brought against a standing government, because the standing army is only an arm of the standing government. The government itself, which is only the mode which the people have chosen to execute their will, is equally liable to be abused and perverted before the people can act through it. So while the people are waiting for the government to be expedient, convenient, making their daily lives easy, in the meantime, it is easy for someone to come in and take control of it and use it for their own, whims. And he gives us an example. Witness the present Mexican War, the work of comparatively a few individuals using the standing government as their tool. For in the outset, the people would not have consented to this measure. So while they were waiting for the government to be expedient, someone came in, took control of the government, which is also taking control of the standing army. And they decided, you know what? We want more land. So they went to war with Mexico. So what did America win from that war? They won Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of some other state. They won a lot of land in that war. They basically just went in and just took it. Actually, they took all of Mexico. American troops marched into Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. So they had a chance to take the entire Mexico. Could have possibly been America today. But for whatever reason, they decided not to take entire Mexico, but to take what is known today as Texas and
To make people convinced that this is good for them.
yeah, that's what they do today. And you're excellent. This is why I'm glad he made that point, because that's what they do today. They convince people that this is the best thing for us. Yes? Right. And and everybody agrees. So, yeah, that's what they do today. Right? Of course, they weren't able to do that then because they didn't have that media. But the point being is that he saw that this was going to be a problem. That a few people would decide this is what should be done. We just got to convince everybody else. And then they're going to use that to achieve other goals. Okay. Yes.
Do you mean that they convince them that they are protecting them? Or what?
Now, that's what they do. Then they just did it. It wasn't, by the time people figured out it happened, it had already happened.
Or maybe people convinced that they choose the right people to take.
And I'm glad he brought it back. So he's bringing it back. Abdul Wahab just brought it back. It's an expedient. It's supposed to make our lives convenient so we can relax a little bit. And people became very relaxed and stopped thinking about what they're doing. Are they doing it right? Because, I got, Mr. Tom to go and he's looking out for my best interest so I can just relax. But while they were relaxing, they went to war with Mexico, and nobody really understood why. But because everything was convenient, it's okay. Well, we just.
A few individuals using the same government. Isn't the government the ones that use the individuals?
No. In other words, look at it like this: 100 people in the government. 5 people wanted Texaco, Arizona, and so those 5 people convinced the other 100. Let's do this. You see?
So the
But if those 5 people,
government to attack them.
right? But if those 5 people had to convince the millions of other people, then it may not have happened. So they didn't have to convince millions of other people. They just had to convince those folks. So this is what it's talking about. Okay. In Islamic school.
I'll talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, that's rolling the hard way. We don't want to roll quite that hard. We want to get one of them little minibuses.
What's up?
Tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Everybody's gone out of their mind.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome, Mr. Quick's class.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right.